VillainCon Minion Blast is mostly great, but I have one big issue with it. Stay tuned and we'll cover all of it. Let's get into it. Let's ride the ride. So what is VillainCon Minion Blast? Well, this attraction is the new attraction based off of the Despicable Me franchise, but specifically the two Minion movies. So the original Minions and then Minions: The Rise of Gru. This attraction is taking place of the Shrek 4D attraction. So if you're familiar with that location, it is now located in what they're calling Minion Land. The whole land has been completely transformed into minions and Illumination characters. So it's a Illumination Avenue and Minion Land. So the whole area is called Illumination Avenue, but this is specifically Minion Land that the now two rides take place in. So we have the original Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, and then directly across the street, we have the new VillainCon Minion Blast. Now this ride is an indoor shooter attraction in the style of something like Toy Story Midway Mayhem, except it's a little different in the sense that you're not actually sitting down in like a ride vehicle. Instead, you're standing on a moving walkway that will go through the entire attraction, and it even turns corners for you. It's kind of strange. You have to keep an eye on where you're standing, because if you're standing in the wrong spot, like the thing will start moving underneath your feet in a weird way. Unfortunately, we were not allowed to film inside the attraction because one, it's Universal, they don't like you filming anything. And then two, it's still in technical rehearsals. The day that we filmed this, we came here the very first day it was open to the public. So during technical rehearsals, they're extra strict about no filming inside the attraction. Of course, I was able to film a little bit of the queue line and the experiences before and after the attraction, but anything inside, I was unfortunately not able to film. Now, the story of this attraction is actually really fun. In the original Minions film, the Minions travel to this convention for villains called, well, VillainCon, which is conveniently located in Orlando, Florida, which is funny. Well, it's another year for VillainCon, and this year, instead of some undisclosed location, it is being held at Universal Studios, because where else in the world can you go that has wild things happening every single day and no one bats an eye? Well, Universal Studios. So it's taking place in the parks, and you are invited to attend VillainCon. So in this attraction, you grab a blaster and you are auditioning to be a part of the Vicious Six, which is like a villainous anti-Avengers kind of group in the Minion universe. And in your audition to become part of the Vicious Six, you pick up a blaster to cause as much mayhem and destruction across the showroom floor as possible. Now, of course, all of this is explained to you in the queue line, which I will say they definitely spent all of their money on the attraction part of this ride. The queue line is exactly what you remember from the two previous rides prior to this one that was in this location. So it's the same outdoor queue, just with Minions and VillainCon logos slapped everywhere, which, looks great, but they definitely didn't spend a whole lot of money to, invest in upgrading the queue. It's the same exact queue, just themed to villains. But as you walk inside, that's where the experience completely changes. And the attraction is a lot bigger and more grandiose than you would expect coming from the Shrek location. The inside of the queue line is where the beginning of the showroom floor starts, filled with a ton of villainous items and villainous characters that you may or may not know from the film franchises. There's a lot of Easter eggs packed inside of that last queue line area. And then from there, you board your moving walkway, which has a dot on it, and they tell you, hey, stand on your dot. And you actually do have to be careful to stand on your dot, because if you don't stand on your dot, then like the floor moves in a strange way underneath you. I wish I could have filmed some of this so you would know what I'm talking about. Maybe next time, maybe once the ride actually opens, I can get a few shots of that. But from there, you're blasting away. You're trying to get your highest score possible. And think Toy Story Midway Mania, except you're actually moving, like you're standing up and you're able to spin around. and there's actually targets pretty much 360, so you can't just stay looking in one direction. You actually have to spin in different directions to make sure that there's no targets behind you or to the sides of you, because a lot of times picture frames will have targets that you can shoot at and whatnot. So it's very immersive, very, very interactive. It's honestly a ton of fun, and I think it's a worthy successor. Typically when a ride closes, what you want is something that is on par, if not better than what it's replacing, right? And I think that this ride does that. In my opinion, it's much more re-rideable. I hardly ever did the Shrek show because, well, one, you can watch it online. The whole full res video was released online. So why wait in line when you can watch it at home in the comfort of your AC and your bed and everything, like, you know? So I just never really rode the Shrek attraction very often, maybe once a year, twice a year at most. So this is an attraction that I could see myself riding quite a bit more. It could be the more family-friendly version of Minion Blast. And I'm not saying Minion Blast's not family-friendly, but there is no height requirement for this Villain Con attraction, which means that it is literally available to ride for every single guest, where there is a height requirement for the Minion Blast attraction. So I do believe that this attraction is going to be a very great addition to Universal Studios Florida, and it does tie in that beginning land a lot nicer. It's much more cohesive, and I think really brings this park into the direction that Universal Studios as a whole, like as a company, parks wide, are trying to move towards. So less individual attractions and more lands that are based off of IPs that we know. So having Illuminations Avenue, Minion Land, I think it's very cohesive. Might not be the biggest fan of the source material. Yes, I like it. Do I love it? Not really, but I like it. And I feel like I can grow to love the lands and the attractions here at Universal Studios. So as I mentioned up top, there was one thing that I have an issue with on this attraction. I think it's time to let you know, to break the suspense. What is it that I do not like about Villain Con Minion Blast? Well, so like I was saying, this is a blaster style attraction. But when you pick up the blaster, it actually does require both your hands because there's a trigger in the front and in the back, like a think of like a grenade launcher or something, you know, like it has two triggers, one in the back and then one in the front. But neither of the triggers are rapid fire. You know how in Minion Blast, when you hold the gun, you can just pull the trigger and keep the trigger pressed and it'll auto fire? You don't have to like keep on like spamming the button. Well, on this attraction you do. And by the time you're in about like the end of the first room, the beginning of the second room, you honestly really start to feel it. Your finger gets really tired. So obviously by the time you're about 3 minutes into this attraction, it becomes almost unenjoyable. Like you're ready for the attraction to end, you know? And for me, it's never a good thing when you hit the end of the attraction and you're like, thank God. Like, thank goodness I'm getting off this ride. It's like, you know what I was saying about re-rideability up front? I think this ride has a ton of re-rideability. It's just the issue is it's so exhausting and borderline painful by the time you're done with it that, I don't know, it's just like you can't get out of line, get back into line and ride it again. You know, like it's one of those things of like, oh, I'll revisit it at the end of the day, or I'll do it again next time I come back. It's almost like a one and done attraction because it's so exhausting. I wish that they had included an option for rapid fire where you can just hold down the trigger and it'll go. Even if there's some cost, like you have to like recharge it every now and then or something like that. I don't know. But just allowing at least one of the triggers to be rapid fire would have changed that completely, and it would have been a next to perfect attraction for what it is. So that's my one complaint, and it's honestly a bigger complaint than some of you might think. So when you ride the ride, definitely comment down below on this video. I want to know what you think about if rapid fire is an issue for you or not, because it really is tiring, especially when you are trying to be competitive and hit the high score and beat all your friends. It's difficult, and it takes a lot of stamina. But of course, one top tip for that is if you're starting to slow down on one arm, you can always switch the gun and shoot lefty. it's pretty easy to shoot lefty even if you're not a lefty. So you can always just switch arms. But then again, having to switch back and forth is kind of obnoxious, and then now both your arms are exhausted instead of just one. So like, I don't know. There's no real good way to get around that. One thing that I forgot to mention is that this ride is not 3D. Although it has a ton of screens and it is a largely screen-based attraction, there is a lot of practical sets. So the screens are covered up by a lot of practical. So it's not 100% screen, but the important parts are screens, right? So even though it's a screen attraction, it's not a 3D attraction, so you don't have to be wearing 3D glasses the whole time. I know that's a big thing for some people. It's not a big thing for other people. I don't know, I feel like Universal's kind of stepping away from the 3D thing and just going with, if we're gonna have screens, they're just gonna be normal 2D screens. And I think for this attraction, it works. But those are my first impressions and early reviews for Illuminations Villain Con Minion Blast. Universal's got to work on these names. They're getting real long. But those are my early first impressions. Overall, I really liked it. I think it's a great addition to the park. But I want to know, have you guys ridden it? If you have, let me know what your thoughts are down below. But if you haven't ridden it, what are your expectations? What are your thoughts on the attraction as a whole? What are you expecting when you go into this attraction for the first time? I really want to know. But hey guys, one last thing before you go. This one's really important. If you want to know how to do the theme parks the best on a busy day, because it's summer and it's insane outside right now, then you don't want to miss this video here. It's going to change your life, I promise.